Commissioner Peel for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll stand.
That's great. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the blessings you bestowed upon us. Lord, we thank you for our county. We thank you for the workers of our county and the service they provide. We ask that you protect all our emergency personnel and Lord, guide us and lead us and help us make decisions that are in the best interest of our county and that will be service to all. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Would please join me in the pledge. Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'll just state we do have a lot of groups that are presenting, and we've got 6 presenters. So if you would kind of stick to the 15-minute rule, would help to get us all out of here maybe before tomorrow. And commissioners will, we'll have some questions, but we'll kind of try to hold those to a minimum too, so everyone can get through it. And we will be meeting the Finance Committee. We'll get together, and we'll get back with each group that does presenting, specifically on their request and what we can do. Just got a little heads up there for everybody. And at this time, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. I think everyone's had ample time to look, and it's in the book. And also, there's an addition to the agenda, budget ordinances. I think everyone's got those in your packet. Budget ordinance number 43 through 45 will be added, and we'll do that as they come up for the budget amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the agenda as stated with the addition of budget ordinance 43 through 45.
All right. Have a second?
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, I'd entertain a vote of approval by raising your right hand. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. At this time, if there's any commissioners' report, does anyone have a report you'd like to make mention of?
Mr. Chairman, one thing I'd say, it's probably a little more fun than budget requests and all that. Right now, I'll say right now, our recreation department's having their memorial early season baseball and softball tournaments, and actually I just came from there because my 7-year-old son plays on a baseball team, and just want to say the rec department is doing a good job with it, and I can't believe how many people have turned out. We may need a little more parking at a couple of our ballparks, but there is some fun stuff going on around the county.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. Recreation is always good, Any other commissioner?
Yes, sir. I had the pleasure of meeting the other day with Mark Earl and Commissioner of Insurance, Jim Causey, and we had a great lunch at Crossroads Grill, but the topic of discussion was on sort of the plight of volunteers, and I think he gets it as well, that we struggle, and that that's a real problem for us, and it is for a lot of people across the state. So it was refreshing to know that we were heard, and our plight is not all by itself.
No. I actually was able to attend with the commissioner, Mike Causey, Roger Blackwell, and Mark Earl at Wittenberg Fire Department same day. Didn't actually get a Crossroads cheeseburger, but we did have a good meeting, and he does understand what's going on, and the volunteers seemingly kind of going by the side, but there are some things that we maybe can try to do to help to increase that. So I was just trying to remember when the commissioner had been in Alexander County. been a while, hasn't it, Mr. French? Has there ever been, Commissioner?
There has been, but it's been a while.
Been a while. So, you know, Alexander County, we're kind of getting into their radar too. So, you know, a lot of things that's going on, and, you know, do appreciate the citizens and what they're doing for our county too. So, we'll see how things come about, you know, from that, and with some ideas from the fire departments and different ones on what can be done to help the, you know, volunteerism. So, and I think Alexander County would do a good job. I'm sure we'll make it through that, and we'll get to the other side and make things work. So just take a little bit of time, a little bit of thinking out of the box to, you know, get those things to work. And they're aware of it in Raleigh also, and there's some things they're, you're going to try to implement too. And all right, and moving on to our meeting agenda. At this time, public comment. Judy K. Wood has signed up from Bethlehem. And I'll just read the list. We've read it before, but this way we kind of keep a standard. The public comment period is intended to allow Board of Commissioners an opportunity to listen to citizens' comments and concerns. It's not a time for the board to discuss issues or answer impromptu questions. Time period of 15 minutes has been established for public comment. Length of comment for each speaker is limited to 3 minutes if there's additional speakers. Please select a spokesman, and I'm sure Judy's going to be speaking for herself here. And comments are directed to the board as a whole, not to individual members. Topics requiring further investigation will be referred to the appropriate county officials, and will be scheduled for future agenda and, you know, getting back. Any citizens also who wish to address the board during public comment can call the clerk of court prior to the, or clerk of the board, excuse me, prior to the meeting, and have their name placed on the list. So, you know, we do appreciate public comment and the opportunity for anyone to hear. Ms. Kaywood, if you'll come up to the mic.
Thank you, Commissioners, Mr. French and Ms. Starnes. I am Judy K. Wood, and I represent the Bethlehem Community Development Association and the Bethlehem Business Associations. I would like to make the Commissioners aware of a notification that many residents in Bethlehem received on March the 26th from the First Citizens Bank that they will be closing their branch in Bethlehem in late June. This is quite disturbing to us as development associations, and we feel like Bethlehem is on the cusp of tremendous growth. So with that, we did meet with the bank and did a PowerPoint presentation to them. And we pointed out to them some of the things that are about to happen in Bethlehem, which next year we're supposed to have a multi-housing project that is going to have from 110 to 115 units that will be built. And also with the proposed sewer project that will open up at least 20 acres of commercial property available for new businesses. And then the 55-plus community, which is very exciting, going to have over 200 homes in it that will be developed at the completion of the sewer project. We also noted to them that the North Carolina Department of Transportation estimates over 20,000 vehicles pass over the Catawba River Bridge every single day. And with that vast amount of traffic, the DOT has proposed to 4-lane from Hickory city limits 3.7 miles through Bethlehem out to Ritchie Road. We also noted to them that the city limits of Hickory is only 0.8 of a mile from Bethlehem, and that with better access, road access into Bethlehem, and with potential new businesses, there is that growth and the potential of bringing business in from Catawba County into Alexander County, into the Bethlehem area. So with all of that noted, we've started a petition that's at the post office in Bethlehem, and we've asked the residents and anyone that are in the area to sign the petition. And we're here to ask the commissioners and the EDC to please reach out to First Citizens as well and encourage them to reconsider their decision in light of the amount of growth that we are expecting in the Bethlehem area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaywood. Good information. And we'll see what we can do on our end, so. Sometimes when banks make up their mind, you know, not much you can do, but, at least we can give it a voice. Appreciate it. Okay. Moving on to item number 2, public hearing for Paragon Films Economic Development Incentive Grant. I'd recognize David Eisenhower, EDC Director. And we need to go to public hearing. This time, I'd entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Second?
I have a motion and a second. Without any further discussion, entertain a vote of approval. Raise the right hand. Good. All opposed likewise. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As noted, this is a public hearing related to the application by Paragon Films for an Economic Development Incentive Grant, and this is related to the expansion at their facility in the Alexandria Industrial Park, and you heard that announcement at a recent commission meeting. This public hearing was advertised in the Taylorsville Times on March 28th, and this grant is based on Paragon's planned investment of approximately $10.5 million and the creation of 14 new full-time jobs. These jobs pay approximately 20% higher than the county's average weekly wage. So these are very good jobs for county employees, or county citizens, excuse me. The county's incentive policy scores each of these 3 factors, being increase in taxable investment, number of new jobs created, and the average weekly wage. Each of these things is scored in the policy to determine what the incentive is. With this taxable investment in jobs and wages that Paragon is proposing, they can potentially receive a refund of up to 95% of the property taxes on the new investment only for a period of 5 years. Also, I want to say that these grant funds are only paid annually. They're only paid after verification of the investment, of the job creation, and the wages. I work closely with the tax office to confirm what the actual investment is each year before these grants are paid. And again, as I said, the company must pay the property taxes first before there's any incentive repaid to them. If you approve this incentive tonight, which I strongly recommend, then the next step would be to develop the joint agreement between Paragon and the county, which basically just spells out the details and becomes a legally binding document for the county and for Paragon related to the incentive. Mr. Chairman, I will be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have about this proposed incentive for Paragon.
Any questions from the commission?
What is the cost to the county?
Over the course of the grant, it'll be on average about $50,000 per year, in that range. And that is based on a $10 million increase in the taxable investment. Now, should that taxable investment change, then the total grant amount changes. If your property tax rate changes, the amount, of course, changes with that. And I would also add that since Paragon has been here, they've paid in excess of $1 million in property taxes. Their annual average payroll for last year was approximately $3 million, and that's just 1 year. So they've put a lot of money into the community.
And I'll say this just so people understand. You said it was a cost of $50,000, but that if they did not do the investment in the first place, there would be
Correct.
no cost, there would be no benefit, there would be nothing extra there. That will be recaptured in the long run.
Correct. Yes, sir.
I believe they've had one or two other incentive grants over the last few years?
They've had 2 other grants. Yeah. Initial grant when they located in the county, and then they did their 60,000 square foot expansion to the facility a few years ago. That grant expired about 2 years ago. So,
how many employees do they currently have?
Right now they've got 40, 44, 45 employees.
And this would add 14.
Yes,
so
sir.
Close to 59 to 60
Yes, sir.
jobs. All right.
And as I said, with average wages 20% higher than what the average wage is in the county.
All right. Any questions from the audience? Okay, being no further questions, I'd make a motion to close our public hearing.
Second?
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor of closing the hearing, raise your right hand. Carries unanimously. I guess we need to vote on the incentive. I'd entertain a motion to approve the incentive for Paragon Films Economic Development Grant.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the Paragon Films Economic Development Incentive Grant.
Okay, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, entertain a vote of approval by raising the right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I do have a letter I'd like to read here from Paragon Films. And Paragon Films, it says here in the letter, they're a proud employer in Alexander County. They're expecting to expand, and this grant we're doing tonight will help to do that. They're going to have 14 new positions, and it says as Paragon evaluates and assesses each investment opportunity, state and local tax incentives are vital to that decision-making process and a determining factor on where capital is invested. Paragon recognizes and appreciates the incentives offered by Alexander County and requests consideration for the economic development incentive as we see the relationship with our community as long-term. And I think we can tell by what they've done and the type of business that they have. They're interested in staying in Alexander County and adding jobs. And also the Borealis will be locating in the same place, so we're having a little bit of, I think, competition. They're wanting to expand and get their plan up and running to maybe kind of keep ahead of Borealis, but Borealis really hasn't opened. I think they're scheduled for the next few months to start hiring, and hopefully by the end of the year maybe be going and working. So, just as Commissioner Liddell talked about recreation, some good things. There's some good things going on too with our economic development and with jobs, and as long as we can keep those moving, it's going to help us all. So, but thank you, Mr. Eisenhower, for that. Thank Paragon Films for their part in this also. Moving on to our next, number 3 is proposed budget presentations, and I'd recognize Alexander County Health Department Director Leanne Westner.
Thank you, gentlemen. I will stick to your 15 minutes because I know you have many to hear from tonight. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background just to remind folks. I know you're more aware than the community what the health department does, but our mission is to achieve a healthy community. And we do that in many ways through education, training, and actual services. We don't always want to provide services, but if you'll remember years and years ago, we just couldn't find dental services for our children, particularly the low income and Medicaid. So we developed that dental clinic that's been very successful. So that's how we get into service when we can't assure that it's there. But we have 30 full-time employees and 4 part-time. We offer 14 programs. And I'm not going to read all the programs because I know many of you are aware of those. I'd already mentioned the dental clinic. I will just briefly mention, because I've had the phone ringing off the hook today for when you get down under communicable disease, we have had 2 confirmed cases of pertussis last week, and we're working diligently to keep it contained in just those 2 cases. We announce things like that so people will just be aware, not to scare people. It's very treatable. Most of us have immunity from our children's vaccines and vaccines as adults, but, and we also inform our medical community particularly because we haven't seen it in probably 5 or 6 years, but it's been all around us. It's certainly not unknown in North Carolina. I think Iredell County's had quite a few cases. So most of the time, communicable disease and some of those programs are kind of behind the scenes, and you don't even know we're out there ensuring your health and programs. The latest one we've also added is primary care. That is doing very well. Our numbers are growing rapidly. And I know this slide is very, very busy with numbers. That's why the big one at the bottom will help you. Total number of visits in 2017 was 8,264. And it's broken down if later you want to see it. If anybody wants copies, I have this. But I showed you number of visits and unduplicated patients, because many times, as you can see, for instance, the dental health clinic saw 3,408 visits last year for a total individual children would be 1,480. Just gives you an idea. We like to track and see who we're seeing, what areas we need to focus on, where we need to do outreach. And of those program numbers, you'll notice unduplicated people served. We may see them like for our pregnant women, you know, you have to go to the doctor every month and then more often toward the end of the pregnancy. So, but this is just counting a person one time in that year. We saw 11% of our total population, which I thought was pretty interesting number. And our budget, I'll get more detailed in our budget in a minute, but a lot of the areas in our budget supports other areas of the community and other budgets of the community. For instance, the WIC program. WIC is our Women, Infants, and Children's program to make sure moms can eat healthy to have the best possible baby, and infants have the formula they need for the best brain growth so they can reach their potential. Of that and that program is totally self-sufficient too. But even on top of that, $411,000, $598.76 was spent locally to support our economy. Now, some of that does go out of county. We certainly support our local economy. We highly recommend they stay here and spend it, but they do have the choice. So that was what was spent in Alexander County. And SNFI funds, School Nurse Funding Initiative. We're a pass-through for that, which funds some of our school nurses who are very valuable to us and we work very closely with. So that is in our budget as well. There's some other savings that we do, and I can't really give you a dollar figure for all these. I can give you some, but like we do employee drug screens pre-employment. We don't do them after hire for like workman's comp or any of that because we don't want to be in a conflict of interest situation. But we do those pre-employment ones. We also do county employee wellness visits, immunizations, which is where you get your protection for pertussis, is through those DTaP vaccines that you need one every 10 years, not just when you step on a nail or have an injury. And we do just recently, the last year or two, we've been doing the DOT physicals. And, of course, drug screens for the Department of Social Services. And I did try to break that one out for you just to show you some comparison data. We've been doing these for several years, but these are the tests that we did, tracked, and we actually called around and got some comparable prices from other private labs. The data shown here that we saved $47,064.50 is actually the lowest one we got. If we'd picked the highest one, I wanted to show you the conservative end of it. If we'd picked the highest one, it was about double that. So, and we're always happy to chip in, and anywhere we can keep things in the county, we want to. So, now, deep into the budget issues. Our 18-19 budget summary is $2,689,714. Let's start that over. Too many digits, right? $2,689,714 is our request of overall budget. Where that comes from, our budget actually will have Medicaid and cost settlement to almost 42%. County portions we're requesting is 23.98%. and that's actually down from last year's number of 28.29. So that's a reduction of 4.31%. I take it to 3.1 because every penny's count, right? And state and federal is 21.65. And fees, we do collect fees, and listed in fees is our insurance billing, anything our clients pay. We do sliding fee scales, so that ranges between the programs. Some of the requested additions that we have in this budget is, as you saw those increase in drug screens and some of our laboratory services, we've also added doing lab services for our community. Many years ago, we had a lot of requests. People that doctors were in Charlotte or at Baptist maybe, and they were having a hard time going down and getting their lab work done maybe the day before and then having to commute back and forth just for a lab work. If you bring a doctor's order to us, we will do those lab services for you. And that program's picked up a lot. I guess, you know, we're seeing an aging population, so it's a benefit and a service our community's partaking of, and we are asking for a half-time lab technician. The drug screens have really increased, and it takes a lot of time. Those are not just really quick procedures. Our capital outlay of $108,000 is includes new phone systems, which I think a lot of the county departments are doing in this year. Next year, we're wanting to get on that same system. Expansion to across the parking lot when the bank building's done. I am greatly looking forward to that. I know many of you have heard that many times, but we have not had an expansion or addition or anything in forever. 29 years I've been here, and we have 2 exam rooms, and we're just walking over each other. So we would move administration with very little expense across the parking lot, and then be able to expand again with almost no cost, very little cost, from 2 exam rooms to 5. So we would more than double our capacity to see clients. And by doubling that capacity, we could also increase revenue. The more people you can see, the more potential that's out there. We always upgrade about 1/5 of our computers to stay current. And I did include, I know you've heard, we piloted a school telehealth program with 3 schools. I did include adding the rest of the schools in next year's budget. Now, that's still to be determined, but rather than not have it in a budget, we put it in case it's successful, not in case, when it's successful and we think it's the right time to expand. It may be next year's budget. That's kind of left to be seen. We're getting through the initial hurdles of all of those new projects, so it's been a learning experience. I do think it's going to be an asset to our community. So, but that's in there if we decide to expand to all the schools, because that's kind of our hope. We didn't want to just pick 3 and leave the others out. So, and replacing an environmental health vehicle that has quite a few miles on it. This budget is very conservative. We actually have 2 grants outstanding that could only help this budget. So we're really hopeful for at least one of those. But that is our budget proposal. And even with the additional requested additions, it's still 3.41% under last year's approved budget.
Good job.
Thank you.
That's what we like to hear.
And on time.
Yeah.
Can I answer any questions?
Pretty busy.
We do stay busy, and I just, 15 minutes is not enough to touch every program we do. It's never boring at the health department, especially today when you have 2 cases of pertussis. The phones are kind of ringing off the hook.
All right.
One question, the telehealth program, we talked about that last year, I guess. So how has that worked so far?
So far, it's been a lot of hurdles to get past. It's just, I'm an optimist to the end, and we're going to get there. It took a little longer than we planned to get all the contracts in place. It took, and I have to brag on the school's IT system and our IT program. It took both those two IT departments working really hard to make this equipment talk to each other and make sure we ensured the privacy of health information. So that got us a little behind. When we first piloted the equipment within the health department, it was crystal clear, and when we got between our system and the school system, it was very blurry. So it took a while to get that worked out, but with some hard work from two very smart departments. You know, they talked way up here, and I was like, don't even try to tell me what it means. Just fix it, you know. Talk very over my head, but it's going well now. We've only seen a few students so far, but I think we're now onto a good road. But there were a lot of hurdles just from the manufacturer to training to the equipment, you know, making sure two different programs are on the same page. But we're getting there. We're getting there. And at least we have another month or two in this school year to see how it works. But the technology is phenomenal. Looking at a child's tonsils or an abscessed tooth is almost better than me looking at it with my naked eye. I mean, because you're seeing it big on the computer screen. So far, the students don't think a thing about talking to an iPad. You know, I mean, they talk to a phone a lot smaller than that all day long. So they've been very comfortable. Just learning a new system that's so very, very different. But what we've heard so far has been good feedback.
Undoubtedly, from a healthcare perspective, it's a really good thing. And maybe this question would be better suited for Dr. Hefner, but has it imposed any kind of undue burdens at the school with school staff, or is that one of the bugs that we're working out?
Dr. Hefner or Dr. Helton could probably talk better from that, but I can tell you from my perspective, how's that? It definitely has added to their burden. They've had to learn new technology. They've had to work through new systems. And I think in the long run, it's going to be more efficient. But right now, it's not. Anything new takes training and learning, and so we're calling the parent up front, so that's another step. You know, then it's fairly quickly, it has been pretty quickly to get us on the line, but, you know, they have to have a little more privacy than they were used to, so they've had to carve out, we've had to make some signs so that people don't come in and out of the room because it is a medical visit happening and needs a little more privacy than they're used to. It is, and they've had to collect all the consent forms and get them, you know, and get them to us. We've had to do some duplication, so they've got the consent, we've got the consent. So, you know, I think this first year we knew it was going to take a little more time and be burdensome to them. But once we get up and running and we know what we're doing, we have a lot of the consent forms, we've got them in place, then instead of that child sitting in the office waiting on the parent to come pick them up, or the school having difficulty even finding the parent and the parent getting off, they can be seen in that, generally the visits are about 10 minutes. So in that 10 minutes, if the child's not contagious, they can be seen and back to class. An example could be an abscessed tooth. Child has an abscessed tooth, you know, you have to be on antibiotics 7 to 10 days before you can have treatment anyway. That treatment could be done without the parent having to miss work, pick the child up, and then we're coordinating those dental visits so that then that visit is scheduled when the child can have treatment. So the parent has one trip versus 2 or 3. So in time, I think we'll be very efficient. Now, they'd probably tell you, yeah, it's been a burden.
Thanks.
All right. Appreciate it. Good report.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Leah.
Okay. Next up will be Alexander County Department of Social Services, Director Patricia Baker.
Hey there. Thank you for having us tonight. We really appreciate the opportunity to give you our budget and provide information about it. I would like to thank my DSS board, Carolyn Hayes, Jeff Peel, Larry Yoder, Iris Bryant, and Reverend Durant Barr. They approved and supported our budget that you all received in your budget packets.
Okay.
And I believe several are here tonight. We know Dr. Peel's here.
Yeah.
So the budget letter I submitted to you included some requests, and our changed requests were primarily in positions, technology, vehicles. We requested contingency dollars and the establishment of a merit program, and that is for DSS staff. Our budget is primarily driven by some changes in state law. You've probably heard a lot about HB 630. It is now state law 2017-41, and that is one of the big drivers of everything we're doing right now. It is changing the way we will be doing business going forward, and I will give you a little more information about that. In addition to that, the rollout of NCFAST into child welfare is a huge driver for us. That will change the way we do business in child welfare tremendously. And I'm sure, as y'all are aware and remember, rollout into our other programs was not an easy task. So we are very much concerned about what that will do to us and our staff and the amount of time it takes to work on our cases. In your budget packets, you received a copy of HB 630. You received a copy of the letter to directors about Medicaid overpayments, and I included a few other items in the budget packet. So as I said, some of the budget drivers are the state law 2017-41, and it focuses on enhancing state supervision of DSSs and also collaboration of counties amongst each other. A work group was created by the state legislatures, and it is being led by the School of Government. They have completed phase 1 of their assignment, if you will, and have submitted a report that may or may not have already gone to the General Assembly. It was due to be presented either in March or April, and I don't know if it has been. But I included links in your presentation to the draft report that went to the, or will go to the legislature, and some information about the School of Government work group so that you can see where they're at. One of the other things that HB 630 does, which is phase 2, is allow counties after 2020 to regionalize if they so chose. And in 2019, the Social Service Commission will be assigned to developing the rules. What does that look like, and what is the cost to counties who do that? And as that progresses, I will certainly keep you guys apprised. So 2017-41, the state law, in addition to collaboration and coordination among counties, it directs the counties to enter into an agreement with the state, and these agreements have to be in place as of July 1, 2018. These agreements talk about our performance, ours being DSS's performance, and it establishes criteria, performance standards that the county has to meet. In your budget packet, I included a copy of the draft contract. It was, I believe, 22 pages long. We have seen the performance standards, which you guys had, but the performance measures, we don't know what we're going to be measured, what our criteria is. So they say X% of X has to be met. We don't know what that looks like yet. One of the things, though, in this law, it says that the failure to meet the requirement could eventually lead to the state coming in and taking over the operation of whatever program is failing. At that time, the county would be obligated to get the program up to whatever the level the state recommends at. And it could include additional cost. It could include additional employees. They could tell us that there are additional equipment needed. And so what we're trying to do in this budget is to keep us out of the state's, we don't want the state to come in, basically. And so that is what is driving this budget. Another budget driver is the North Carolina Health Choice and Medicaid Overpayment Recoupment Plan. This was also part of that state law, and it is Section 57. I've also included the letter to directors that we received on February 26th about this overpayment process. They being the state, will come in and if there's an audit finding on a Medicaid or North Carolina Health Choice case where we found a client to be eligible when they were not eligible, the state will come and recoup the state and federal share of that money. You will see on a future slide how much money we're talking about in Medicaid expenditures in Alexander County. But we also, in addition to determining people ineligible where we have to potentially recoup, there's also a condition, and I included the entire language for you in my slide. But if we determine someone ineligible incorrectly and they had an outlay of funds that they cannot then get Medicaid to reimburse them for, will also be the county's responsibility. So we're hit at both sides. And so those two are the primary drivers of this budget. Now, the reason we're asking for a quality assurance staff, we're asking for 4 new positions in this budget, and it is primarily the drivers I just spoke to you about. The potential overpayments that we have to deal with, the performance indicators that the state is going to hold us to, and what we will do with these quality assurance staff, they will focus on our 3 eligibility areas, our primary areas. We're broken up into food, nutrition, adult Medicaid, and family and children Medicaid. And we also have child care and energy under the food nutrition supervisor. So we'll have 3 folks who will fill those slots, and then we'll also add a child welfare program person because of the NC FAST rollout and all these other things that the state law is now requiring us to do. And so the positions, the QA positions would also, they would train, they would retrain, they would provide NC FAST training and troubleshooting, they will read records, and they will make sure that we are meeting our obligation to the degree humanly possible. We can never eliminate human error, but we can do our due diligence in reducing that, and that's what we want to do with these QA positions. We are also asking for a reclassification of an existing position from a processing assistant to a paralegal. And that will allow my attorney, I only have one, and he covers child support, adult services, and child welfare. He's in court every day, not every day, every week, several days a week, and that does not allow a lot of time to get the paperwork done for the next court. And so a paralegal will provide that time to help us get those cases ready for court, work with other attorneys, make sure that they are prepared and ready. It will reduce continuances. It will expedite children going home to their parents if that's the court's decision, or allow the children to find other permanent placements. It will also allow us to deal with our wards more expeditiously and our child support cases. And we have talked to other county directors. I have spoken with them, and they have found that to be a very successful way of dealing with the court situation. So here is a summary of our position requests and the cost to the county. Our entire 4-position request totals $202,000, of which about $98,000 will be county expense. And that is because our various programs have different reimbursements. Medicaid is 75% reimbursement, food nutrition is 50%, and child welfare is a much lesser reimbursement because they are mainly admin coding, and we can't really code to a program there. Our paralegal request, we already have that position budgeted at $35,000 with their existing classification. This position goes up to 55 with benefits, of which is $38,000 is the estimated county cost. but we expect to receive about $17,000 in reimbursement on that position. So that's where we're at with that. In addition to those requests, we're asking for 2 vehicles. As noted in my budget letter, we had a vehicle that was hit by someone driving, totaled that vehicle. So we're asking to replace that vehicle. We also have an SUV that has very high miles, and we need to replace that vehicle. And the county cost to that would be about $29,000. We also need technology due to the NC Fast rollout. We're asking for lighter weight laptops, dual monitors, scanners, and IT tells me that I'm at capacity and I need a network switch. I don't know what that is, but they tell me I need it. So I'm asking for that. That is at a cost of about $60,000 to the county. We do get some reimbursement on that. Our contingency funds for Medicaid, that's, we're budgeting $50,000. That is an unknown. We could end up with a $1,000 overpayment, a $0 overpayment, or $1 million overpayment. It's the luck of the draw depending on what case is pulled and if it was determined incorrectly. The QA staff will help limit that, and my hope is that that $50,000 is a placeholder only, that we will not need that. But regardless of whether we put it in the budget or not, if we have an overpayment, the county is obligated to repay it. So I wanted to put something out there just to have coverage and make you aware that that is something out there. We're also talking about a merit program, and that is at an estimated cost of $36,000. And that is because we are losing a tremendous amount of staff to other counties, and we want to stay competitive and reward good work and long-term service. So here, I'll try to go quickly, so I know I'm using my 15 minutes very quickly. This is just Medicaid expenditures. You have the entire 2 reports in your packet, but it shows you what Alexander County residents expended or are anticipated to expend in Medicaid claims for this coming year. I also included the number of recipients as of February 2018 and February 2017 so that you can get an idea. And that budget, you know, if there's a claim, if you went to the doctor or you're in long-term care and you have several $1,000s a month that the county's paying through Medicaid, then, and that was determined incorrectly, that could be a repayment. So we wanted you to have those numbers. And as I said, the QA staff will hopefully address that. So we did a salary comparison. I did not get every county that I reached out to respond to me, but I did include the ones that did respond. And as you can see, the salaries, particularly in Social Work 3 area, which is where we lose our staff, we are lower. And so we're hoping with the merit program that we can keep those. We have about 39% of our staff with less than 2 years experience, and these are high liability, high risk positions. They're out in the field. I just recently had a worker caught in what they thought was a crossfire of a drug deal going bad in Hickory. Actually, it was in Conover. And so my staff are out there in areas that are not always the best, and we're trying to keep them so that we don't have to keep sending brand new folks out there. We spend a lot of money on retraining, and we would like to keep those folks. We typically lose our staff to Catawba and Iredell, and so I've included our neighbors. This is what I'm calling our neighborhood. And you see that we're not expecting to be able to keep up with their salaries, but I would like to keep the staff from going to those counties, and a merit program will help me with that. So I'll try to end. Hopefully I'm almost on time. So our total budget is a $58,742 increase in county funding over last year. We did only have an increase of $25,000 over last year, but because of a reduction in revenue, particularly the $50,000 I'm asking for Medicaid contingency money, that would be 100% county. So we were able to reduce some expenditures and other line items, including foster care, and we hope that we could continue to reduce that with a paralegal. I will be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sorry if I missed anything.
A question, your merit program, is that like a bonus or is that a salary? How do you plan to administer that, or?
I would look at that as a evaluation, and it would be added to your salary. I could certainly take other advisement, but that is typically how a merit program that I'm familiar with works.
Also, I'm glad to see you put the building, I mean, not the building, but the vehicle. I think you probably should put that every year in your budget, build a sinking fund, because I know your fleet is getting older, much like we did with the sheriff's department. I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, these people, you can't do it all at one time, but you can do a couple vehicles every year. So I commend you on that.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure that we've always done that, and there have been a couple of vehicles that I'm like, who drives that old beat-up vehicle? And they're like, that's a county car. I'm like, oh, sorry. But I think we're beyond that. We're starting to get, our vehicles are getting more modern.
Just a few questions. First one, on the Medicaid expenditures. So your estimates are that this coming budget year, we're going to have $49 million roughly of Medicaid expenditures for 7,000 odd people in Alexander County. Is that right?
Those are the state estimates, and I included the report that they send.
Okay.
So, yes.
Is that, but all that money is not spent in Alexander County. It may be spent at a hospital or a nursing home in another adjoining county, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But that expense is not what Alexander County taxpayers are paying, just so people understand that. That is coming from federal, state, and local monies, but.
The claims currently, if the program is done correctly, there is no county investment in Medicaid.
Okay.
That counties used to contribute 3% towards Medicaid expenditures. Now, the only thing the county's paying for is my staff time, which right now we're getting we're only paying 25% of their salaries. So 75% is reimbursed.
So none of the staff time is in that number? That's
No.
Okay. That's just payments that go out to the people
Claims,
receive?
services,
Okay.
yes.
All right, I got you. As far as NC Fast goes, I thought it had been rolled out in everything. So child welfare was left. Is there anything else that it has not been rolled out into yet?
Adult services and program integrity are the three programs that are currently still out there. And
Okay.
Program integrity is slated to roll out maybe August, and child welfare in this county has been pushed to September. The federal government has given North Carolina a deadline of December 2018 to have it rolled out in child welfare, or they start losing money. They start having revenue taken away. And so I expect we will, if we don't go in September, it will be pretty close after that, or there will be some money lost by the state.
And can you give us like a 2 or 3 sentence just synopsis of what NC Fast is? So people
So
will know.
NC Fast is North Carolina's Families Accessing Services Through Technology, and it is a case management system for social workers, or will be for social workers. My current eligibility staff do all their applications through the system. Our clients can apply for benefits through the system. In child welfare, it will be the case record. So their notes, the way we bill for services, everything will be done in NC Fast.
And as far as the overpayment goes, so I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. They're going to come in and do an audit, pull out a couple files, see if those clients are actually supposed to be Medicaid recipients or not. Is that
Well,
what I'm
we have a
reading?
bunch of audits. We have the county single audit, which we're currently going through right now. And in that audit, they pull about 100 records and they look at them. If they find defects, then they dig further. But there are other audits besides that the state, they'll come in, they'll send us a list of cases, and we're subject to that. So there'll be multiple, not just one audit, but multiple throughout the year. The federal government audits North Carolina, and every 3 months we go through an audit. Not every county's pulled every month, so you just don't know. It's the luck of the draw.
So really, right now, there's no way to tell if there's been erroneous overpayments, or if there's been clients that have been denied when they shouldn't have been? I mean, you can't really tell right now.
Right now, we're not tracking that because there hasn't been a repayment. When we find an error, we correct it. There's no dollar amount that I can give you that's tied back to that. I do know that some counties have already had some state audit findings, and they're repaying those or disputing those, and obviously that would be our first course. We'd always dispute that. But it could be a tremendous amount of money.
So these personnel that you're requesting, they're going to check everything going forward, but they're also going to go back and start digging in previous years and looking at those to make sure that they were correct or not?
Well, we cannot, even with 4 people, I can't check everything.
Okay.
Because there's a tremendous amount of volume of work. But they will focus on the high-risk programs to start with, like long-term care. That's where you would have the hugest amount of dollars. And then we will look, and we will spend more time with our new staff. They would get longer training periods so that we make sure that what they learn is right and what they're putting out is right. Whereas now it's not always, they're thrown out on the floor and you just hope. But we're trying to make that more deliberative and make sure that the work is correct and limit our liability to the best we can.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
So previously, there was just no check on that?
We have staff that does some second partying now, but it's not to the degree that it needs to be. They have their own case work and they mentor staff. There's just not a dedicated process to it, and this will be dedicated.
And Trish, if you can remember, I'm not sure now exactly what it was, but you have a $58,742 increase, but added to your budget was a whole lot more than $58,000. Do you happen to have that number handy?
Well, I did send in the letter that I submitted to you. We actually increased our cost by $492,000. And that's on the page 5 of my budget narrative to you.
For $58,000.
Right. Well, we reduced our foster care, transportation, and SA program. So I promise you, we have gone through, fine-lined everything to save as much money as we can. And with the paralegal, we may be able to save some additional money. But the estimated county cost of the requests I just discussed with you was $312,000, almost $313,000. But yes, we're trying very, very hard. And Sherry Deal's out here. She's my budget officer, and she's done a tremendous job of keeping us on task. And when there's a grant we can apply for, we do, and we would continue to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks for that report. Good information.
And we like when there's, I think it's very obvious. I mean, and this is almost a dumb thing to say, but we love the fact that your budget increase is much larger than your request, because that shows increased efficiency. And that's, I think that's what we've been trying, you know, and that's one of the things those of us sitting up here have really wanted to see happen, so very good.
Yes, savings is good. Okay, well, next up will be Alexander County EMS, and I'd recognize the director, Mr. Doug Gillespie.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for giving me the time to speak and explain the request increases and stuff. To start off with, I'm going to give you a little bit of the 2017 statistics. And what makes us a unique county is our call volume with 4 trucks. We ran last year 7,217 calls. Average en route time from the time we're dispatched to the time we're en route to the truck and going to the call was 1.17 minutes. And North Carolina standards state that within daytime hours, they want it within a minute, and with nighttime hours, you have 3 minutes. Average on-scene times is 12.7 minutes. So that's the time we reach the patient to the time we're en route to the hospital. Now, here's the big one that a lot of people do not realize. In Alexander County, from the time we arrive at the patient till the time we arrive at the hospital is 44.63 minutes. So we're with that patient for 44 minutes in the back of the truck at the house. So we actually have to really work hard compared to some of the other counties where there's a hospital next door, there's a hospital 3 miles down the road and stuff like that. Wanted to also give the average call times. This is the time we get the call till the time we check available back in the county. Now that's when we cross the county line. It can be 127 coming back from Fry, or it could be Highway 90 coming back from Caldwell, or Highway 90 coming back from Iredell. It's 70 minutes on that call. So the time we're dispatched till the time we check back in service ready to run a call. That's not including the 10 or 15 minutes it takes to drive back to the base, or even more if you're coming from Bethlehem all the way back into this area if you're coming from Fry or Catawba. So that puts a little bit on us. Plus, we have what they call electronic or patient care reports that we have to complete for the standards to meet our standards there. Depends on the call. That can take an average of 30 to 45 minutes for us to do. We've increased or decreased that time with what we call CAD import and what we also call our EKG monitor import. So that's one of the things that I wanted to bring back. We are with the patient for 44 minutes, 45 minutes itself. Some of the budget focus we want to talk about today, we're going to talk about the units, the building itself, equipment, some supplies, personnel, training, and some educational experiences and some travel itself. In the budget package you see that I have requested a total increase of $154,381,000. I don't want to let that shock you. That's what we've requested. But I also want to make sure to emphasize that we've also increased our revenue from collections for patient care reports approximately about $75,000 to $150,000 over this last year by doing some more basic life support costs, taking patients from the hospital to doctor's offices and stuff like that. So I didn't want that $158,000 to get you right offhand itself. One of the biggest things we're seeing right now is our units. Yes, y'all have been gracious enough the last couple of years to buy us a unit every year, a new unit. We did have about a 3-year lull in getting that unit, and it's actually put us behind. We're averaging over 50,000 miles a year on a truck. So the truck that we just purchased right now has 17,000 miles on it already, and it was just put in service a little over less than a month ago. So we're seeing that. We've got one of our backup units now with 236,000 miles that's blown up 7 months ago. It's going to cost us $20,000 to fix this unit. Once you fix the engine itself, you've still got to worry about that unit's front end alignment, its front end suspension and stuff, transmission and stuff like that. So we have not got it fixed. We're talking with Josh Mitchell and that area itself. So, like I said, the newest truck, we got 17,000 miles. So the big thing I want to talk about here is in this budget year's budget requested for 2 of the older units to get what we call remounted. Some of you are probably familiar with remounting a truck. And basically, we use 2 of our old boxes that are in excellent shape because we buy from AEV. And we will take those boxes, have them refurbished, and then they would be mounted onto a new chassis. So basically, you're getting about a new truck, but for a lot less money. We're seeing this come into standards a lot nowadays. Average cost is about $90,000, and I said that's an average cost. It might be less, and it might be just a little bit more, but when I talk to a couple of the remounting companies, they say you're looking at about $85,000 per truck. So this puts us at $180,000 for both trucks. If you would buy those 2 trucks new, you're looking at about $140,000 to $150,000 a piece. So you're looking at $300,000 for a rough estimate itself. So this could probably save us $100,000 or a little bit more itself. The building itself, we're looking to do a request for $50,000 to build a 2-bay garage that I had also put in last year. We've got 2 trucks that sit outside that are mainline trucks right now that we get up in the middle of the night. If it's 10 degrees outside, that truck's usually 10 degrees too. We've been having some issues in keeping and maintaining temperature control for our medications. Our medications have to stay in a certain area of temperature. We've talked with local vendors. We've also worked with Josh Mitchell, and it's been documented that we tried. We are actually having to put ceramic heaters in the back of the truck, portable ceramic heaters in the back of the truck to keep it warm. And if we plug it in and use the heater that's in the back of the truck, it'll kick the breaker on off as soon as the heater comes in. So we're having to request that for, like I said, a 2-bay garage. We'll have a place for both trucks. We'll still have to have 2 trucks outside in that location itself. So we have to maintain our medication control itself. Equipment, just asking for an increase of $2,000 to replace some aging radio equipment that's become outdated. We're also placing some of the equipment on the ambulances itself. Because basically what we do when we purchase a new ambulance is we'll just usually take most of the equipment off the old ambulance that we're getting rid of and put it into the newer ambulance. We'll buy some of the main things, stair chairs, stretchers, suction units and stuff, but some of the frac packs and everything else is a little bit easier, and they last a little bit longer, so we're looking at that. Supply line. We're looking at an increase of $10,000, and I know you say due to a natural disaster. A hurricane in the southern part of the United States and Puerto Rico is putting a damper on a lot of medications. Puerto Rico has one of the biggest drug companies in the area, and its damage has caused it to close down, and we're having to get more medications from here. Plus, we're seeing a cost increase due to the just regular itself, just with the everyday inflation itself. Plus, we're seeing shortages due to drug companies actually coming in and say, okay, I can make this drug for the cancer patient, and I'm making a profit off of it, or I'm making more money off of it. So we're just going to hold the public safety section back a little bit. So we're having to find different vendors and stuff like that. Salary increases, we're looking at $60,000. And in that salary increase, it's a 2.5% for our field training officers. And I looked at the back of the data, and I think it was about 8 years ago we started hiring field training officers. These are somewhat upper management, but they are there to help us with new employees to teach them how to do things. But we've increased their jobs over those last 7 years, and we've never gave them an increase for that new position. With the 2.5 increase, I'm looking at $4,000 for that year, for this year itself. They do a lot more work than just running calls. They work with the new employees. They work with employees that need to be worked with a little bit more, having some issues. Plus, they do call reviews. Plus, they do a lot of things. They work with our training committee and actually help set up protocols. They help set up new procedures and new policies itself. So we need to look at that. And then the $54,000 more on that would be just the cost of living raises. With EMS, and I know with the Sheriff's Department and some of the emergency services, it's hard to predict what our salaries are going to be. We can get close estimate, but when you work a 24-hour shift and you get called out to go to the hospital again at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you're supposed to get off at 8 o'clock, and you work 2 or 3 more hours of overtime, it's hard to predict that, but we're getting pretty close. Training and education, we're looking at some salaries increase with that, not anything over that $54,000, but we've had an increase in our continuing education hours to maintain our recertification. Plus, over the last few months, I think y'all are all aware that we've had some retirements. And we have what they call a changing of the guards, because of some of the retirements have been the upper management. Well, I was fortunate enough to go to a leadership class at the UNC School of Government a few months ago and gained a great deal of knowledge. And I think what we need to do is use $3,250 to send the new supervisors that we're getting ready to hire to the School of Government to give them the opportunity to gain the knowledge and succeed in Alexander County and Alexander County EMS. And of course, with that come training and education, that comes with a little increase in travel too. So it's $3,000 for the leadership training courses itself. Like I said, before you have any questions about the $158,000, in your packet is my 5-year plan that I'd like to see for the future. I don't want to sit here and startle you next year and say, hey, we want to do this, we want to do that. I want you to be aware of what we're looking at and progressively getting stronger, progressively becoming more not more knowledgeable and stuff like that, because procedures and stuff, we're increasing. When I started this business, you would not look at a 12 lead, but now we're actually recognizing heart attacks in the field. When I started it 25 years ago, the doctor said, here's a 12 lead. It took me 4 months to learn how to read it. Well, I've got to read it in 5 minutes. So that's some of the things we're looking at. So it shows you my future and my hopes for the EMS. Like I said, thank you for your time, and if you got any questions.
You just mentioned heart attack. So, I was thinking about the drive times. You're spending approximately 45 minutes with each patient. Is there any kind of, because if you look at medical treatment, you want to look at outcomes. So do you have any kind of outcome data that you can compare to other counties where if a person has a heart attack here, they're getting this, their survival rate is
We're
just as
seeing
good here?
we're seeing our survival rate with when I took over, we started looking at data. I'm a data statistics type of guy, and we started looking at data, and we're starting to see a better survival for sudden cardiac arrest. And we want to implement that with Greg Foster in communications. We want to implement it with Russell Green and first responders, and also the sheriff's or Chris Bowman there. The sheriff's departments respond with us on code situations. That's what's key is early recognition and early CPR, and that helps out. But we are seeing survivals where they walk in the door, or we bring them into the door on a stretcher, and they walk out the door on the hospital with no neuro deficits or neurological deficits. So we are seeing an increase in survival, but we're seeing those patients walk out the door, even having what they call the widowmaker heart attack, where they walk out the door, even with 44 minutes with that patient.
But do you have a way to compare that to surrounding counties where there are hospitals?
We can look at that data.
Okay, I'd be interested in seeing
Okay,
that.
that's something I'll work on.
And also, how many employees are in EMS currently?
Currently, we have 60 total employees. We have 38 full-time employees and the rest part-time employees.
Doug, one thing I want to, this is just, I guess, way to go. I love the fact that you gave us a, hey, this is where we want to go down the road. That, that whether whether the commission and the county is able to do it, to provide, to do all these things, over the next 5 years or not. I'm just glad to see, you looking down the road and having a long-term plan, well, even though 5 years isn't that long, but, a long.
I've got a 10-year if you want me to send it to you,
I'll say a
too.
long-term plan beyond, hey, this is this year and this is.
10 years, and that's about it for me.
Because that's, planning goes a long way.
I always look at it, what I tell some of the patients, and I know this sounds bad, but we're going to hope for the best, but we're going to expect the worst.
Good report, thank you, and like I say, we do appreciate the time you spent. And looking to long range a little bit is always good. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next on the agenda is Alexander County Emergency Services. I recognize the director, Mr. Russell Green.
Commissioner Reese and Commissioners, thank you very much for allowing me to be here tonight. First of all, let me take just a minute. I know several of you were out of town last week, but those of you that did get to meet with Commissioner Causey, we greatly appreciate that, because I'm going to hit on why he was here just a little bit in this presentation. But I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with him. I'm going to talk tonight about our office and our volunteer agencies, and I want to start off with the good news on that next slide, Chad, if you would. Our fire departments, our 8 volunteer fire departments, are operated off of a fire tax that's collected in each of their individual districts. And if you look at that spreadsheet that's on the PowerPoint, we have some of the lowest fire taxes in the region. My best comparison, our highest one is 6.5 cents on the 100. My parents in Caldwell County pay 13 cents, double that. So our fire departments are doing a great job keeping the dollars down. I can't stand here without bragging on them. They do a great job with that. So I wanted to show you that comparison. The next sheet is a busy sheet, but if you look at that center column, it tells you what the proposed budgets look like for our 8 volunteer fire departments. At the bottom there with $81,000, that's the Vashti Department, and the highest one at the top at $331,000. And these are proposed budgets. If you look to the right-hand side, extreme right-hand side of that sheet, you'll see what's recommended from my office for each of those fire departments. And I will say, gentlemen, there's a typo on there. That fire tax rate for Bethlehem is .031, not .035, and I apologize for that. The next sheet you look at is the current debts for all the fire departments, equipment, buildings, so forth, standard debt stuff. If you look, Wittenberg Fire Department, they currently, as of today, have no debt. They're working on financing a new piece of apparatus, and that's a typical cost. Wittenberg has just ordered a new truck, or in the process of ordering a truck, for $320,000. And I will tell you, that's not spruced up. It's not got a lot of bells and whistles on it. It's a straightforward piece of fire apparatus. Those of you that have dealt with the fire department before, their projected debt service in the coming years is $38,000 a year. And I'd say as we move forward, that'll be typical for most fire departments. If you come down to the Stony Point Fire Department, it says no current debt. They are currently looking for a piece of used apparatus because during their last ISO rating, they just missed a lower rating, and one piece of apparatus would have made that difference. So they have some funds in their budget, and they may have some debt coming up from that. But those are the current debts of all the fire departments and what the annual or monthly payments are for your review in your packet. The next sheet, we'll switch over to the rescue squad just a little bit. Alexander Rescue and EMS, they provide us rescue services across the county, and they still serve when all of Mr. Gillespie's units are tied up. We dispatch the rescue squad for an ambulance. 15 years ago, their allocation was about $30,000 in round numbers from the county. Over several years, we've worked that to a point of $120,000 in the current allocation this year. You see how that's broken at the bottom. $45,000 for rescue, $15,000 for backup EMS unit, and then we help staff a couple positions there during the day, during the week. And typically, a lot of times during the week, those are the only two members that are able to show up because everybody's got a job. And that kind of leads us into Commissioner Causey's thing. But my recommendation for the coming year is a slight increase for them. And that increase is to offset the time they have to spend raising money. They're a volunteer agency except for the two guys during the day, during the week. We give them $120,000 a year from county funds. They're still raising over $80,000. So we're asking their volunteers to go out and constantly raise money, raise money, raise money. Well, going out and raising money takes time away from their families. Then when we need them to respond to an emergency, we're asking them to leave their families again. So if we can offset some of that need for raising dollars with a little greater allocation, I think we can help that volunteerism problem in their case a little bit. My next sheet, and before I get into this, Commissioner Causey was here to talk about the volunteerism across the state. And we all know that's a thing that's affecting all of us, and Dr. Peel mentioned that as we started out tonight. It is an issue not only with emergency services, but with the Red Cross, with United Way, with the Lions Club, everywhere. Volunteerism is a problem. So that's one of the reasons that the Commissioner was here. He wanted to stress that. A little over a year ago, I asked all of the board presidents of those 9 volunteer agencies, 8 fire departments and a rescue squad, I asked their board presidents to come together. Not their chiefs, not the folks that respond every day, but the guys that chair their board meetings because they control the dollars. And I sat down and I challenged them. What are we going to do in the future to make sure we've got people responding to calls? Because volunteers are going away. And I will tell you, I'm very proud of those 9 gentlemen. They have come together now roughly 6 times over the last year, and they put together some ideas. And last Tuesday night, 2 of my board presidents had an opportunity to meet with Chairman Reese and Manager French and talk about a couple of these, and I'm going to put these out there tonight. But by no means do the board presidents think the county can do all of these things. These are things that we've never done in the past, but these are ideas to look at, kind of let's start somewhere and let's start working down the road to start fixing some of our issues. So the first idea they came up with was some kind of incentive program. They modeled this after one of our current fire departments here in the county, Bethlehem, does a similar incentive program. But they basically said if any way the county could set aside $5,000 per agency for maximum total of $45,000 to work out an incentive program for existing volunteers. Let's give these guys something for the time they've put in, the dedication, the years of service. So that's one option, the incentive program. Public education is something that doesn't cost anything. Our board presidents felt like the issue is a lack of knowledge. So with Micah Henry's help with the Times, he's agreed our presidents are going to write a series of articles. And we feel like the great article last week, Micah, and we appreciate that, on Commissioner Causey's visit, and we think that's a great kickoff. We kind of got one setting in the queue now as soon as Micah and I can get together and get that printed up. But the board presidents want to take that on themselves and kind of educate the public what volunteers do, what the ISO rating stands for, and what it means to our citizens. So I think that's a great thing. I think it'll mean more coming from them than it would if a county employee sat down and wrote an article. So those are the guys in the community that answer to that community. The next problem we've talked about is some staffing issues. A little over a year ago, in a matter of about 6 weeks, we had 2 house fires middle of the day, middle of the week. We had 6 fire departments at one, 7 fire departments at the other, and we still didn't have 20 people there to fight fire. We lost both of those structures. There wasn't any hope. Just this past December, in the northwest corner of the county, we had a similar call about 10 o'clock in the morning. We lost a large double-wide home, and the family standing there watching us. Number one, when I got there, I was the 5th person to walk up. 6 calls. We wound up with 6 volunteer agencies in this county on the scene. And when the young man called for assistance again, I said, you can stop asking, nobody else is coming. Wound up with about 15 total. About 5 of those were truck drivers. So we lost the house. The house was lost when we got there, but it just kind of, to me, it kind of put an accent point on the fact that we got an issue that we got to deal with, and we can't keep ignoring it. So what the board presidents come up with, there was a couple options, but this was the one that rose to the top. If we had 4 firefighters that could be dedicated to this county Monday through Friday during the day when everybody's at work, and we could station 2 to one side of the county, 2 to the other side of the county, work with the volunteer agencies that are there so they could allow them to respond to truck. 2 would respond to emergency traffic to the call, the closest 2, and the other 2 respond to routine traffic. This is kind of patterned after a program that's being done in several other counties. Cabarrus County is the one that jumps to mind. They started a program last year. Now, they hired them on as county employees. We're not proposing that because that comes with benefits and all those other things that's very expensive. We're looking at similar to what was done with the rescue squad. We give them an allocation, the fire department hire a couple people with the agreement that they'll respond anywhere in the county and use the fire department equipment to do it. So that's one option. The other option to do this, you could possibly do this by doing some kind of, they talked about maybe the county doing a grant program to the volunteer agencies for another person. Well, one person get you a truck driver. We're talking about bodies to man hoses and fight fire. Respond to wrecks is what we're talking about. 5 of our 8 volunteer fire departments have a paid person Monday through Friday, one person. That gets the truck out the door. And that greatly helps with the response times. It gets the piece of apparatus there. But like I said, back in December when I walked up, I was the 5th person to walk up. There was one truck hoping another tanker was coming, and everybody was fighting fire. I have to say it's the first time I'd been able to fight fire in a long time. But wasn't really wanting to go up there and do that, but I did it. So we do have some paid staff in our volunteer agencies, and they're doing that in their existing budgets. But if you go back to that first one, they're keeping their fire taxes very low, and we certainly appreciate that. But we've got a staffing issue during the day, during the week that we need to talk about. So this is an option that the board presidents wanted to bring to y'all, as they described Commissioner Reese last Tuesday or past Tuesday to you. The next slide. There's a couple other things that the board presidents are very excited about hopefully being able to do. I have talked to Dr. Hefner and some of her staff concerning a firefighter program at a high school. There are 77 public safety programs across the state of North Carolina in our high schools, and they vary. You start with a public safety class, and then you can focus it on firefighters, you can focus it on EMS, you can do a combination. They have law enforcement programs. I've been told these programs are all successful. There are a couple in the neighboring counties. There's Iredell County, Catawba County, Caldwell County, and I know Burke County's got a couple. But what we're looking for is a firefighter program. And what that would take is actually our school system having to hire another employee that's certified with the Office of State Fire Marshal to teach fire classes. Mr. Gillespie's excited about this because if we can get a firefighter program started, then maybe we can branch off of that with an EMS program. what our board presidents see and I see is an opportunity to grow some volunteers. That's the selfish side in me. We see some volunteers coming to our volunteer agencies. What I see also is we're giving our young men and women at the high school another career path. Just like we teach carpentry and masonry, firefighters become good job applicants in this state, to the point that I know of one fire department that's nearby that's put a question mark on their application that says, did you participate in the public safety program at high school? If you check yes, I've been told that application goes to the top of the stack because they've got those necessary skills to go to work. So I think it's a great opportunity for our students. I think it's a great opportunity for Alexander County. So what we're proposing to the commissioners, if there's some way you could possibly help fund that, because what they'll have to have at high school is an instructor. And I think the first year it's a part-time position, but then it would become a full-time position. I think the program will be very beneficial because we've got a number of junior firemen in this county already. Even Vashti Fire Department has some junior firemen. Bethlehem, Taylorsville, Ellendale, Wittenberg's just getting their junior program back up. So junior firemen are kind of where we build our base from and we recruit. And if we get them early, hopefully we get to keep them. That's kind of the theory. The next one on that list is the rescue funding. We talked about that. If there's any way we could increase their funding a little bit to offset the, they're currently fundraising about 45% of their budget each year. So if we could offset that and not burn them out raising dollars is where that's at. And then the last one's on there, some type of training facility in this county. And like I said, gentlemen, nobody expects y'all to fund 100% of these, but these are targets to work toward. But there has been an opportunity for, been approached at my office to be able to lease some property here in the center of the county. If we could lease a piece of property and say it's going to be a public services or emergency services training facility, then we could work with our volunteer agencies with Duke Power, Energy United to start building some training props on this property. But the first piece would be to lease the piece of property. Now, I included that in my departmental budget in a small amount to even so we could start talking about the lease. Nothing set in stone there. It would still be discussions, but that's in my departmental budget. Those are the ideas from the board presidents, and I think they're good ideas, but they bring them to you. Now we'll come back to my departmental budget, fire marshal and emergency management. We continually, every year we get about $38,000 in emergency management program grants from the state for our office to function. We routinely apply for state and federal grants to do our exercises. Our last exercise at the high school was funded with one of these grants. So we routinely ask for those grants. Our last year's budget, 17-18, was $462,000, but please realize that was, we had three expenditures. We had a air trailer, well, that's to the tune of $101,000. We had to replace a vehicle that was aged out and literally ordered it in October and just received it this week. And then we had a direct grant last year of $18,000 to purchase and equip a mass care trailer. All of that equipment was purchased, so it does, because of those capital expenditures, it looks like our budget decreased this year, and it has a little bit. Total budget this year is about $346,000. That does include some lines in there. If you see it on the revenue side, it says 100% grant funding, and you see it on the expenditure side, if we don't receive the grant, we don't spend the money. So those are reflected in there as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Russell, real quick question. So the incentive program and the paid staffing, you know, I mean, these are just ideas, but is there a benefit for Alexander County to, you know, pay those expenses or do a grant program to the different agencies, to the different fire agencies and rescue squad? Is there a benefit for us to do that, or would it be better to take the fire tax and raise the fire tax a penny or 2 pennies or whatever it needs to be? Because the fire tax is supposed to be used to pay for these, you know, for fire protection expenses. If you do it this way, you're taking property tax money and using it for fire protection.
Absolutely. The advantages are that it gets the staffing piece, it gets us some people during the day that we know are going to be there because they're getting a paycheck. So we're starting down that road of hiring people. This is the most inexpensive way to do that. Could you raise fire tax to do that? Yes, you could. The only downside of that is that fire tax is that fire district. There's no guarantee that that person will be allowed to respond. They run mutual aid greatly,
Yeah.
but there's no guarantee that guy could respond all the way across the county during the day just simply because he's there, because fire tax goes to that particular fire district. We've never taken fire tax and put it all in a pot together and divvied it out, because I'm not sure anybody could truly justify that and say that's fair, because you pay it for your district.
But
I hope
I'm
I
sure
hope I
that
answered
they
your question.
could come up with some sort of contractual agreement that, you know, they agreed to do that, you know, if there was a penny increase across the board.
Yeah, I'm sure they could. I mean, a penny there, you know what a penny brings in. You guys know it better than we do. It's just, unfortunately, we're a small county and there's not a big pot to pull out of, and we all understand that and we certainly respect that. Commissioner Leo, do you have a question?
Mr. Green, I do. I know, you know, Bethlehem got a federal grant to build the Bethlehem Fire and Rescue. And wasn't there a piece tied to that there's supposed to be somebody, you know, a paid person there or available 24 hours a day?
Not 24 hours a day.
Like I say, I'm asking this question,
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
If I remember correctly, in that we worked on that grant quite a bit, as part of that grant, they said they would put somebody there during the day, during the week, and they've done that.
Okay.
Bethlehem successfully met that application. There are funding streams out there, there are grants out there fire departments can apply for staffing, but it comes back to, once you receive that money and you have them for 3 years, at year 4, you got to pick them up 100%. You can't just use it for 3 years and then say, oh, we don't want them anymore. Mm-hmm. You're committing, once you take that grant, it's a safer grant, is what they call it. Once you hire them, you have them those 3 years, on year 4, they're totally yours. Full-time staffing, you got to pay the bill. And that's why our volunteer departments won't go after that, because they don't know what 4 years down the road holds. Our departments routinely apply for matching grants. The state's matching grant every year gets them upwards to maximum $30,000 to buy equipment with. I think they do a good job pursuing those. Just this past year, Ellendale Fire Department, $160,000 in federal money to replace all their aged-out air packs, which was a great grant. That's happened in Bethlehem and now Ellendale. Truck in Wittenberg several years ago, and the local Carpenter Grants bought 3 or 4 pieces of vehicles for our fire departments and rescue squads here in the county. So they routinely go after those grants, and we applaud them for that.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening.
I'd just like to say one thing too, that what y'all do in the fire departments, there's a savings in, just as Commissioner Mayberry had touched on, property tax. Also, I work directly related to the insurance department. It's probably, I don't know if there's a way we could really calculate all of the savings to the homeowners and business owners through reduction in premium because of the ISO ratings for our fire departments that are being, you know, so good. And it comes back to the training, the volunteers, the people working together, which reduces our cost greatly, you know, as premium paying people here in Alexander County. So, you know, we've got to look at, you know, all of those things. So I appreciate this report, appreciate the time you put into it, and, you know, we'll see
Commissioner
what we
Reese,
can.
I certainly appreciate you bringing that, because all of our departments have lowered the start out, the base rating's a 9S, and all of our departments are at 7 or less, so they have saved our homeowners quite a few dollars in premiums. I certainly appreciate you bringing that up. Dr. Peel?
100% of the people who have a legitimate EMS call or fire call really don't care what it is at that point. You know, the money is not an issue at that point. When your house is on fire, your spouse is having a heart attack.
Yeah. They don't care what color the truck is. They don't care, as long as somebody's coming and they're getting help. And I will say you, based on my 19 years in Alexander County, we've got some very dedicated volunteers that train very hard. Mr. Gillespie, Sheriff Bowman, got some dedicated staff. Sheriff's carrying AEDs in all his cars, so his officers can attach those to people and shock them if need be during cardiac events. So our emergency service staff and our volunteers go above and beyond, in my opinion. They don't just wave their hands at it and say, well, I think I'll sit here and eat dinner. I don't think I've ever caught one doing that. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you, Russell. This time, I don't know about anyone else on the board, but I'd like to call a brief recess, 5 minutes. Gentlemen, if anyone leaves, let's adhere to that so we can get back and get started again. Thank you.
Oh, Grant.
And we'll reconvene where we left off.
He hasn't missed a meal, doesn't look like.
If everyone will take a seat, we'll get started back. And before we left off, we'll start back with our Alexander County Sheriff's Department and our Sheriff, Mr. Chris Bowman, if you'll come up for our next presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners. Glad to be here. I'll kindly have to rush through this. Captain Penn was going to hand out some material. As you all know, that the sheriff is responsible for not only the sheriff's office, the detention center, 911, and courthouse security. So there's 3 different budget requests that we have to go over. Be honest with you, I don't think our budget request is going to change much from last year's budget. I know that this year is time to trade out some of our duty weapons because of the age of them, and Captain Penn will go over that with you here in just a few minutes. We're here tonight to ask for 4 more positions in patrol. I've asked for these positions now for about probably 5 years. And with society, everything going on today's world, we are having a terrible time of even getting applicants to apply in law enforcement. The BLET schools is seeing this trend of nobody applying. And it's not only that, but it's the salaries that we are so far behind from the other counties. And I'd like to say from January 2013, we have lost approximately 52 to 54 officers. That's not counting the detention officers. We got another figure on them. And most of them have left either to go to surrounding counties for more money that they were making doing the same thing that they did here in the county. A few of those, of course, didn't leave voluntarily, but the majority of them left for more money. And at that, I'm going to call Captain Pennell up. He's one of my immediate supervisors that will go over quickly with you the sheriff's office side, and then I will have Captain Starnes with the detention to come up and speak with you along with the 911.
Thank
you. Good afternoon. Real quick, capital outlay for the sheriff's office. We are requesting 4 more vehicles again this year, just like we always have. That money has not changed at all. It's the same amount we requested last year. We also requested for 12 bulletproof vests. What we're trying to do is stage those at different times so we don't have a big bunch all at one time that comes in and we have that amount. So we did request 12 last year. We're requesting 12 this year. We're also requesting replacing of pistols. What happens is these are loaded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They never get unloaded. Then they're shot so many times. And so after a period of time, that weapon, we don't want to run into an issue that's going to malfunction or some kind of problem that's going to come up. So the trade-in value of that would be $5,700. Now what we're suggesting on doing is we're switching from a 45, that's what we carry now, down to a 9mm. And what happens in that, over the cost of just a couple of years, we end up saving that amount of money in ammo. Every 3rd case of ammo we purchase will be free for what we're paying now. So over a period of time, we'll end up saving this $5,700 just in ammo cost. So the holsters that we're going to have to purchase and those things will come out of this year's budget. We've already planned for that. So this will be the only cost that we'll have into next year's budget. So that's the capital outlay. There, if you have any questions about that, I can answer them real quick. We've not decided on a vehicle because I try to find a vehicle that are left over at cheaper, prices. So that's just at the spur of the moment as I can find them. The other thing I wanted to go over is the first piece of paper that I gave you in your packet. We hire full-time deputies from part-time positions. We've always done that. We've never went just straight out and hired a full-time person. So if you look, and we broke down the cost, and I'm not going to go all through that in time, each officer is required as an officer to have 24 hours of in-service. That's including qualifying and all the stuff that's mandated by the state. Now, that's not included the 300 hours that we look at, that we have to have that person riding with somebody, that we train him how to do reports, we train him how to serve papers. At BLET, just to be honest, they get enough training to get themselves in trouble. That's really all they get. And then we have to train them how we do things, how to do reports, how to do them on the computer, our process of all those things. And 300 hours is really a low ball. It could take longer, it could take less, depending on if they're coming from somewhere else. So after you add all that up and those 54 positions, over the last 5 years, we've lost $475,000 just in training employees. So we get them trained, we may send them to work, and a month later, they're gone. And we don't get any benefit from them. So that's the one big thing that we wanted to mention to you. Then if you calculate that over the last 5 years, and if you go to the next piece of paper that's in that little handout, and the adjustments the sheriff would request in salaries, that will pay for it. If you add that out, divide that out over the last 5 years, we spent somewhere around $95,000 each year in training those employees that we've lost. And the adjustment the sheriff's requesting is right around $100,000. If you look on the very last page, it'll spell it out. It's like 102 something. So then moving on to the very last part, and the last attachment that I put, it's going to look like this gentleman right here. If you look at that center column, our communications director, Greg Foster, went through and calculated out the calls that we've started from 2006 all the way down to 2016. A 131% increase over the past 10 years in call volume. And what's happening is we have, so you understand how we do this, is we have 3 officers on every shift. If that officer's off work or he needs to get sick or something, we have to replace him. We can't run anymore with 2 people in this county. We just can't do it. So the reason the sheriff is requesting those 4 officers is you spend somewhere around $326,000. That's what we requested this year in part-time budget, and what we pay deputies that we have to fill those positions with. If you take, in that very last page, it would cost us $193,000 to put 4 deputies on the road. If you take that off, that's going to come off our part-time budget. We're not going to be using those part-time deputies as much. Now, we're still going to have some kind of part-time budget because we have now 4 officers that are required at the courthouse every day that court's in session, 1 on each door and 2 inside as a bailiff. And we don't have the positions to fill them full-time, just being honest. So that we're still going to have part-time monies that we're going to have, that we're going to have to fill those positions with. And if we have more than 1 officer needs to be off, then we're going to have to fill that. But for the most part, we can alleviate that with those 4 officers that we're asking for this year on the sheriff's side. Does anybody have any questions as far as that goes?
Let me, before, add to that is that the 4 officers, that will give us 1 more officer per shift. You run 2 shifts, we run 12 hours shifts, so it's not 4 more per shift, it's just 1 more officer.
Totally. So you're proposing we eliminate some of the part-time positions, take that money and put it toward, I'm completely good with that. I've been wanting you to do that for a long time, so, yeah.
Yeah, I know when we met the other night, I was amazed that, I kind of thought of it, but when you got the figures there of what it costs to train somebody, and then if they leave, we've got that money going away, plus we're starting over again. So I think $8,854.73 per each new hire. So that's a pretty good amount of money, so.
And, you know, if we can get those positions, you know, that's great. But we got to try to come up with something to draw attention where it's not training grounds, that we can even fill, you know, those positions, so.
That's right.
Captain Pennell, I got another question for you.
Yes,
Sorry.
sir.
And I'm not second guessing you guys, I just want to answer this. So you're carrying 45s now.
Yes.
And you want to go down to 9mm.
Yes.
Do you feel that that is going to meet the, is it going to keep the officers safe?
Yes. Most of your agencies now, sheriff's office around us are switching back to 9mm. The ammo is better, and you can carry more rounds on you with less weight. I'm 25 years into this, and the sheriff put me back on the road in 12, and this 45 is heavy to carry around, so it's more comfortable once you get less weight off around your midsection, if you understand what I'm saying. I'm toting around like a child or something. So as far as ammo goes, it's just as good. Most officers can shoot better, and I want them to shoot and hit what they're aiming at compared to, if you understand what I'm saying, on the other end of it.
Well, the knockdown power of a 45, you know, one shot.
Well, to be honest, if you take a 45, it's not all about, it depends on the person. It depends on what they're on. I've seen all kinds of things, not just to get gross, but I've seen all kinds of things, and I've seen any person shot with anything just about. It just depends on the placement and everything else that's going on. I feel confident as a firearms instructor, and I've been a firearms instructor for going on close to 10 years now, that this is, at this time, it's the right move. It'll save us the right amount of money. It'll get us where we need to be.
Does the ammunition have a factor in that too? What type of ammunition you use in a 9mm? Like high velocity or whatever?
Yes, just if you want to lay ballistics out, what we carry right now is a 230 grain gold dot bullet. It's got around 411 foot-pounds of energy out of the barrel. The bullet that we're suggesting on using when we go to 9mm is 404. So you're only just minimal. So the difference is the weight, but you know, it'll make up for itself.
And two, now we are, back when we got to 45s, we got every car equipped with a rifle and a shotgun that will take up, in my opinion, you know, the difference of that, so.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Already, detention. Captain Philip Starnes. While Captain Starnes is, and I know that probably running close here, but with 2 or 3 different budget requests, I hope you understand.
We might have.
I'm sorry?
Sir, we might have to ask our if you run over time, we might have to ask our security, you know.
Okay. All right, well. Everybody load their guns back.
Since you're controlling the security, I guess take as long as you want.
Yeah, you got as long as you want, I guess.
Well, thank you very much. But I'm going to turn it over to Captain Starnes and let him explain to you what we're proposing.
Good afternoon. It's pretty much the same thing that Captain Chapinell said, that we broke it down between a full-time detention officer and a part-time detention officer. Full-time detention officer, we go through, of course, the hiring process, background check. It comes down to we spend a total, or a full-time officer, hiring them and getting them fully trained and where they can be by themselves, comes up to about 538 hours, which comes up to about $7,194.45 to fully train a detention officer. That's in-service hours, which can vary between 16 to 20 hours, depending on if they're deputy sworn, they do firearms. It also goes through a DOCC, it's Detention Officer Certification course that the state mandates we have to send this officer to. It's a 5-week-long class. it comes down to, it's a 174-hour class. That is something we do have to send them to. It boils down to, since 2013 to 2018, we have lost approximately 30 full-time detention officers for a total of $215,833.50 that we've lost. We've spent training these officers that they have left from us to go to other agencies, and not just other agencies, to any job to make more money. I've had a couple of employees go to Lowe's Home Improvement to make more money. I had one go to a water plant to make more money. So it's just not our agencies, but it's just literally just any job. A part-time detention officer, it goes through the exact same amount of hours of training, the exact same schooling. The cost is a little bit lower just because of the pay. Since from 2013 to 2018, we have went through approximately 27 part-time detention officers, which has cost the county $182,902.05, which total, bringing all that together, we have since in the last 5 years, we have spent $398,735.55 training these officers where they have left. We're requesting, which is be the same from what Captain Pennell said, 4 positions in the detention center would also be 1 officer per each shift, and we would also cut back on our part-time, and the money would work out exactly the same. I think our cost was a little bit, not much higher, $193,500.23. So it would work out the same. On our budget request, on our capital outlay, we just requested to replace a vehicle that we've been using for our transport, just high mileage. And I've also requested Lexapol policy services be added on for our detention officer policy. Right now we use it for the sheriff's office. We would like to add on to the detention part. It's a great program. I've done a couple webinars. In our actual budget, I did request to increase the uniforms by $5,000 just due to we don't know what's going to do with our staff, because of course we uniform each officer, and with them leaving constant, we have had to spend a little bit more, but just to make sure.
If I may add to that and to the audits too, when we say part-time, part-time is individuals that have a full-time job, whether it's in factory or wherever it may be, and they're able to work on weekends and or of evenings, nights. So it's hard for any agency, I would say, to keep liable part-time that is able to work every time you call them, because we try to use them on commitments, sitting on commitments or transporting commitments, this type thing. But the part-time, and it's a headache. I'll have to say it's a headache, and if we could get cut down on the part-time, I think we not only saves money, but it saves time also of lining up, lining up help. Because we're an agency that if somebody's out sick or takes vacation, that position has to be filled. And on the transport car that he was mentioned, I know we got the van a couple of years ago, and we use it also. We have a lot of trips out of county, coast to coast as far as that goes, and that's normally what we use that van for because it's reliable. And the transport cars he's talking about is running like back and forth to the courthouse, bringing and taking prisoners there, and this also used out of county transports too.
If I may,
Yes, sir. Captain Starnes, of the list of the, at the detention center, is there a break point where there's sworn officers and not sworn officers? How can we know the difference in that?
The only difference I can think of is if I'm understanding your question, there's a difference between a detention officer and a sworn deputy that's a detention officer.
Right.
There is a difference. A sworn deputy detention officer can do the same duties as a sworn deputy, serve warrants, serve civil papers, anything like that, take reports. A regular detention officer cannot do those things. Now, of course, working in a detention facility, it's like working in a gated community. You have responsibilities that you have to take care of. You still type up reports. You still have responsibilities you have to do. You're just not sworn to where you can serve warrants. And of course,
those things take place inside the facility, is what you're saying?
Yes. Just like today, we've served some warrants today on an inmate that we had.
And that helps bringing patrol off of their patrol in the county to come back to the office to serve.
And of course, as y'all know, we are housing a lot of inmates from other counties. And I think, I'm trying to remember the March statistics that I emailed out. I think we probably processing somewhere along 230, 250 inmates coming in. Going out, usually it's about the same. Sometimes it's a little less.
Great information. My question, though, is on our list, how many of those people are sworn officers of this list? Is there a way to say, okay?
Yes.
I was like, Commissioner
their names are in red.
Okay, that's what I was wondering what the red was.
Yeah,
okay.
the red names are the sworn deputies that we
officers.
have.
Okay. Good deal.
I don't think my name's red, but I'm one of the ones that are sworn.
Oh, yeah, you're red.
Yeah.
Sworn and sworn at, probably.
A lot, yes.
In regard to the revenue that we're receiving,
Yes.
are there any present groups or counties that we're serving that are in the process of building a jail that we have the potential to lose that revenue?
They are, but
And is there anybody out there we're teeing up to maybe solicit?
they are. I know we're housing for Iredell County and Burke County, and I know they are in the process of building a new jail. I think they're a couple years away from it being finished. Catawba County, we've held inmates for them. They've not even started even in the prints of breaking ground that I've been told. That's another possibility. We have housed inmates for McDowell County just due overpopulation. They're not planning on building anything. I know Surrey County has contacted us multiple times. Our biggest problem is not having enough staff to take in all these inmates at one time. That's where we run into our biggest problem.
Okay.
But
I may add to that, we just turned down
40
the last 2-3 weeks. That could have got us $40 more per day per inmate because of not enough staff.
In regard to that, like if you get one, your cost, what's your revenue versus your cost, how does that shake out? I mean, because there's a certain fixed cost you've got in the jail all the time, and your variable cost, I would assume, would be how many you're serving and how many people you need to properly take care of them.
there's not, if there is, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I don't think there's a set price on how much it costs to house an inmate.
Okay.
Because they tell us that whether there's a person in that room or not, the lights are on, the water's running, anything like that. Prices on inmates, it varies. Of course, we charge $40 a day. There are some counties that charge $60. There are some counties that charge $100. The statewide misdemeanor confinement program is a program where it's through the state. They house inmates on misdemeanor charges for misdemeanor time. They only pay $40 or $45 a day. Federal inmates, they tell you what they're going to pay you. So it could be 30, it could be 50. It's completely up to them.
Okay.
So we try to stay in the ballpark of 40 to help our counties. Because I really think if we were to jack up the price to 50 or 60, they're going to try to give us some more.
Yeah, they could see that offset the pricing.
Yes, sir.
Now, when we take if we took 10 tomorrow, they bring them to us, or do we have to go transport them?
Yes, sir. They bring them to us. We process them just like anybody else, and they stay with us.
They
And they-
deliver and pick up.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like Enterprise.
We pick
And we are constantly they are constantly switching out inmates. Between housing for 5 different counties, we are constantly switching people out, because they come get them for court, and they'll bring inmates for their place.
Captain Starnes, the shortage, the manpower shortage, I guess, or, not having enough officers, you said you had to turn away inmates from, recently. Is it, you said, and I think I heard you correctly, you kind of said that it was trying to take in all those inmates at one time or process, is it is the problem, is the staffing problem, is it, hey, we can't handle taking in 20 people at one time? Hey, they're bringing you a busload kind of thing?
Yes, sir.
Or is it just, hey, we don't have the staff to take care of 20 more people once they're here?
That's
It's-
correct.
yes,
After
which-
the process, it's a minimum of a person going door to door looking in 2 times an hour.
Right.
And of course, the state inspectors, they won't tell you on paper, but they suggest 7 to 8 guards in the jail. Because you got, let's start, officer brings in say 1 person under arrest, brings them in to process. There has to be at least 2 officers. Normally, we try to have a male and a female, because now we house females. And those 2 officers then process, that takes up the 5 that's working now. And then it's supposed to be 2 in the control room that's looking at and opening every door in that facility. And this plus 164-bed facility, all the other doors that get you in and out. If you come and they don't like you, start praying that somebody's going to let you out that door. Because they just don't let anybody out. But anyway, I think we got one of the safest, and I want to say this, and thanks to county manager and the commissioners, one of the safest facilities around. That being secure, the Sally Port has helped tremendously to what we used to have up at the courthouse, where you walk them outside and next thing you know, they're up and running. But 2 in the control room, 2 in the processing, and 3 on the floor, walking, checking doors. This is 24/7. It's no rest time.
So it is, it's not, hey, we need more people to process and get them,
Yeah, I think what he's asking is, do you need more people there doing paperwork as they're coming in, or do you need more guards going around between the cells?
It's a little bit of a mixture of both.
Well,
but
right.
It's more the starting process, because once you get them back in the back, they're more secure. Up front in that booking area, it's an open room, and of course there's 3 holding cells, and once you get 20 inmates up there, it's hectic. Anything could happen, and plus we're responsible for what happens in the back. So if I've got 4 officers in the front dealing with all the processing, that leaves 1 in the control room and only 1 in the back, or 2 in the back. So it kind of contradicts itself.
And this is for the female staff too. They go in amongst the male prisoners just like the male guards do also. That's just part of their duties. The females normally try to do the control room because a male cannot oversee the females, but a female can oversee the males. So and anybody is invited to come by and see the operation. I think a couple of you have. Be delighted to let you see, how it's working, especially now. I think we've been there about 5 years or so.
You promised not to keep us.
Well, who's opening the gate when we come visit?
Yeah. I'll be more than happy to open the gate for you.
I've been up there and, we've went through there and you need to get to see it sometime with people in there. You know, it's a different
Oh, yeah,
story.
I've been through. It's not been recently, but
Not booked, I hope.
no, not recently.
Not recently.
All right. Thank you,
Okay,
Captain Stone.
thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, it's an honor to stand before you. I'm going to attempt to make you understand, or help you to understand a bunch of percentages and facts and figures. I don't have anything to hand out to you other than what you have in your budget packages. The first thing I want to call your attention to is one of the sheets that Captain Pennell handed out, the percentages. The sheriff said his percentage went up 131% over the last, well, from 2006 to 2016. The reason I did 2006 to 2016, this was something that I prepared last year. That was when the two 911 Center and the Sheriff's Office Communication Center combined was in 2006. And we combined with one 911 operator and one Sheriff's Office telecommunicator for two. Up until last year, we still had those same two people. Last year, you were gracious enough to do what I hope is part one of two parts. This year, an additional 2 full-time staff to put us to 3 people, because we have had a overall increase of calls 90%, and that is actually dispatched calls. That's not someone calling asking for a phone number or directions. That's actually dispatch calls for law enforcement, fire rescue, EMS, animal control, other services after hours. Those calls were dispatch calls, 90% increase. 2 things in my budget. One of them is a percentage increase for the current staff to try to get us up to par of where other counties are at. For a new 911 operator coming in off the street that's had no prior training, what we're hiring 95% of the time, it takes 823 hours to train that person. That is classes plus live training in the comm center before they can sit on their own and take their own call, 823 hours. You multiply that by the part-time rate, because we always try to train at part-time rate, that's roughly $11,000 to train that person, to get them prepared to go to another county. And I say that jokingly, but I'm serious too. And from 2013 to 2018, I've lost 18 staff. And most of those staff I've lost to the county south office. 9 of those were full-time, 9 were part-time. Out of those 18, 1 passed away suddenly. The others left for better paying jobs. The reason for the increase, the requested increase of the 2 additional staff to give us 3 people, 24 hours a day, is NFPA standard is one of the guidelines. Yes, it is a standard. It is not a law, but it is the standard we're held to if we're sued and have to go to court. Those are going to be the people that testify against us. It is the standard that is used for ISO rating. Fire Marshal spoke a little bit ago about coverage in the county. As you may or may not know, your fire insurance is set by ISO ratings. How well that fire department is rated. One of the things in their rating is the county's communication center. One of the rules says communication centers that provide pre-arrival instructions must have a minimum of 2 telecommunicators in the comm center 24/7. If one of them's in the restroom, we're not meeting the standard. If one of them stepped out to pay the pizza man, we're not meeting the standard. Or if they have to call in food, because they're there for 12 hours, no breaks, no lunch break, they're there for 12 hours. At some point in time, they have to eat. If they don't bring it with them, what they generally do is call in an order and run to a restaurant and get it. We're down to 1 person if there's only 2 working, so we're not meeting that standard. The other thing is the ISO part is it says, when requested by incident command, a telecommunicator shall be dedicated to communicating
on the incident channel. In other words, when the fire departments go out to, say, a working house fire, they're assigned an operations channel. If that incident commander of that scene requests a telecommunicator to be assigned to them, that takes one of those people, and they're assigned to them, and standard says they can't do anything but take care of that fire scene. They're listening for a mayday, a fireman down, which, thank the Lord, we've not had that happen in this county in a long, long time. It happens in other places, and so far, everyone I've saw on large-scale incidents where they've lost firefighters in a mayday situation, came back to communications, they lost. They lost in court because they didn't have that dedicated person. That's my request for the staffing of 3 people, is to try to meet some of those standards. Yes, it's still not 100% because if we have 3, one's assigned to fire, one's in the restroom, we're still not meeting the standard. But our request is for 2 more telecommunicators to give us 3 24 hours a day. We currently have 2 24 hours a day and 3 12 hours a day. And the other thing is the request for the increase, a small increase to try to stop the mass exit of telecommunicators leaving the county going somewhere else for a little bit better pay. And this would hopefully turn that around and we'd take some of those people back. Be happy to answer any questions that I can. If there's any of these documents that you do not have, you'd like to have, I will get them to you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster, for a good report, and we'll be looking at all those things and
thank you.
See what we can help with.
And I want to thank you as the board commissioners, and I apologize to Jennifer. I was afraid this would go over, but as you can tell, the sheriff's office of this county has grown tremendously over the years, and there's no way that I could stand up here and take the pat on the back, so to speak, if it wasn't for my chief deputy and the captains and Greg Foster to help run the office. So I think we got some questions.
Yeah, I did want to ask just a couple questions. Sorry to put you back on the spot.
Yes, sir. No,
here.
sir. I apologize.
And we haven't talked about this in a few years, but I was just glancing over the numbers of the animal control, and the number of calls has went down just considerably, especially from 2008, 2009. They were just, went from nearly 1,500 calls in 2008 to 343 calls in 2016. I know we tried to do a little bit of coordination there, maybe with our animal control officers and the sheriff's department. What kind of things are you seeing? Why is that going down? Why is that number going down? Do you know?
To be honest with you, sir, at the point in time several years back, we had an animal control supervisor that was, everywhere he went, he was checking out with us.
Okay.
Creating a call. The last few years, those are pure calls that's coming into us that we're contacting animal control. Animal control has stopped checking out with us. That was even down to if he was running to Walmart and picking up supplies. Realize they have mobile CAD, so they can put themselves out on a call the same as a deputy can or the same as EMS can. So I think he wasn't trying to be dishonest. He was trying to honestly show everywhere he was at all the time. And it was really inflating those numbers.
Okay.
And what you're seeing now is strictly calls that come into us, and we contact animal control and say, hey, you've got a dog ran over and there's someone standing by needing help with it, that type of thing.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
I was just going to say, in summary, I think we're all going to continue to see wage pressure with tax reform and all these companies announcing minimum wages of X. This problem's only going to get worse.
Yes, sir.
It gets better. And, it's going to be a tough battle not only for businesses to face, but for municipalities. It's going to get worse before it gets better. So, you know, this attrition that we're seeing, it's going to be a challenge ongoing from this point.
Mr. Eisenhower is making it even more challenging going out and seeking these jobs that's paying 20% above average. So he's making it worse on us. 7 calls an hour.
Okay, thank y'all again.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate the work you guys
Everybody in the
do.
back, good job. All right, last but not least, recognize our Superintendent of Alexander County Schools, Dr. Jennifer Hefner.
Thank you, Chairman Reese, Vice Chairman Lael, board members, and Mr. French. I always appreciate the opportunity to stand before you, and tonight I will present to you the 2018-2019 budget request for the Alexander County School System. In North Carolina, we have 115 public school systems. And before I jump into the budget request for the upcoming school year, I want to take just a moment to highlight some of the celebrations we've had this past year. These academic celebrations are the result of an emphasis that has been placed on curriculum for the past 3.5 years. We've established a model of instructional leadership that includes the use of curriculum coaches at 9 of our 10 schools and high-level professional development for both teachers and administrators at every level. These accomplishments speak volumes as to the work and commitment going into our children's education in Alexander County. You have the presentation and you can read the numbers before you, but we've highlighted some of the things that we certainly have talked about this past year. Most recently, I would like to go down to the third bullet, where we discovered in January that half of the system's third grade teachers ranked in the top 25% of teachers in the state for student growth in the area of reading. I think that's pretty impressive in little Alexander County, where half of the teachers at a grade level are in the top 25% in the state. You see other celebrations, but of course I go down to fourth grade math. In grade level proficiency, they are 8th out of 115 school systems, and in college and career readiness, they are also 8th out of 115 systems. During the budgetary process last year, I felt it was important to ask the system's principals for their input into positions that they found most critical to their students' success. The following input was captured from the middle and high school principals. The top 3 positions that they felt were most important to this student's success included assistant principals, counselors and social workers, and instructional coaches. Elementary principals told me that the positions most critical to their students' academic successes were instructional coaches. It was ranked number 1 for all 7 principals. Teacher assistants were critical, as well as counselors. And I think sometimes if you don't work directly with children in schools, it's difficult to understand some of the roles that people play throughout the system. And I wanted to hear directly from the principals what they felt led to an effective school and as well as, as I said, these successes. The next slide is just simply a recap of fund balance information that was shared with you earlier. I think that was in January. I talked to Sharon Mahaffey, and we are 3/4 of the way through the school year. We have spent almost 79% of our local budget and almost 81% of our state budget for the year. Therefore, that leads me to believe that we are on target to use the amount of fund balance that we have earmarked to balance the 2017-18 budget. The next slide is just simply the county appropriation by year that we have received from you. We are always appreciative, and this is the money that we have received since the 2005-2006 school year. In talking about that local appropriation, I don't know that I've ever stood in front of you and told you exactly where that money goes. I want to highlight that the first 2 items in this long list of things that we use that local appropriation for, the first 2 takes up approximately half of our local appropriation. That is staff supplements and utilities. You, again, can read the list, but I think that a lot of times when you talk about, oh, we get this money from the county commissioners, I think it's very important to understand where that money is spent. The next slide talks about some things that we know are coming to us. These are definite increases that we will be seeing in our budgets for 18-19. Retirement will be increasing from 17.13% to 18.44%. Retirement increases for employees not paid on the teacher salary scale will total just under $60,000. And I want to reiterate, these increases do not include allotted positions, as those salaries and benefits are covered with state funding. Local and federal funding is used to fully staff our schools. And in these funding sources, we are responsible for making up the difference in any of the increases that I'm going to talk to you about. Health insurance will be increasing from $5,869 per employee to $6,104 per employee. That will total an increase of almost $62,000. Teacher salary increases, and this does include health insurance, retirement, and Social Security, will total $387,232. All three of those increases combined comes in at a grand total of $508,434. The next slide is the minimum projected use of fund balance for the 18-19 school year, all things staying the same. I have taken the amount of fund balance we are projecting for the 17-18 school year, and to that I added the increases that I just talked to you about, coming to a total of $1,678,446. When the presentation was made talking about fund balance in January, we will have a balance of $700,545 available to us, leaving a reserve of $2 million for supplements and 1 month of operating expenses. That gives us a deficit of $977,901. The next slide, I took the 17-18 local appropriation. Excuse me, I added to it this deficit, and it comes to a minimum request for local allocation for the 2018-2019 school year at $7,009,801. Information that we still need. We don't have this information. It's early in the budgeting process for school systems. We do not have our state teaching allotments. We do not have our federal allotments. And these increases do not include raises for non-certified staff. We do not have information about the number of CTE-funded positions, and we may have unforeseen security costs and mandates considering the discussions around school safety throughout the nation. Also not included in the budget request, we know that we have additional staffing needs. Last month, I was in attendance at your meeting where you adopted a resolution about the opioid crisis. We teach the children of the families experiencing those crises. We know that the ratio for social workers is recommended 1 social worker for every 400 children. And at that rate, we would have 12.5 social workers, and we only have 5. Nurses, the ratio is 1 to 750 students. The recommended amount would be 6.6, and we have 6. Counselors, the ratio is 1 to 250 students. That would give us 20 counselors, and we have 15. So we know we have needs that we didn't even come to you with, but I put that information to you. That concludes the actual budget request itself. Do you have questions before I ask for a couple of more minutes?
What's the total employees in the school system right now? Just, you got any?
We ran those numbers, about 850. Does that sound right? And that's everybody. That's teachers, assistants, bus drivers, custodians, substitutes, administrators, the whole shebang.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
In your block of money that you get for, I guess it's instructional support, social workers, nurses, counselors, all that, is the state funding changed on that, or is that?
We're still funded at the same amount that we were.
So have the recommendations gone higher and the funding stayed the same?
The recommendations, yes. And I think a lot of that, Dr. Pill's just based on needs. The things that we're seeing showing up at the steps of the schoolhouse as far as just a reflection of families and homes.
So you get the great opportunity to make a choice whether you want to.
A media coordinator or a counselor.
Yeah, or a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
Retirement increased from 17.13% to 18.44%, or is
Yes.
going to.
Yes.
So what does that entail? Why is it going up?
That's a state mandate.
But that's what I'm saying, is it because whoever they're wanting to put more money into the retirement system?
I'm not exactly
Okay.
sure the rationale behind it. We just have to adhere to the numbers we're given. I don't know. Sharon, have you seen any rationale behind that increase?
They want to increase the money in reserve in the retirement system.
Okay.
Okay. Money in reserves. Okay.
Well, we all know Raleigh's really good at coming up with wonderful ideas and then not knowing how to deal, well, how to fund them, let alone, yeah, but anyway.
Is the state of North Carolina putting that money into the retirement system? Are they sending an extra 1.5 roughly %? Okay, I know, it's a funny question, I'm just asking.
Typically, over the years, they've protected that pot pretty well.
Yeah, but I understand why they're putting the money in there, but are they sending?
Because of the millionaires next door,
Yeah,
right?
are they sending the money, to pay for it? Is Raleigh sending the money to pay for it? No.
Only
Maybe
in
Jennifer
allotted
could answer that for us.
Only in allotted
She'll
positions.
come up.
Thank you.
It's an actuarially determined figure, the state retirement system. They have the state employees, which is where the school system is, and then we're into the local government employee retirement system. So they have different actuarial formulas, and so they're making up for any investment losses. And there's also a state treasurer who is, maybe this is his second year in office. He's doing a really thorough job of shoring up the retirement system. So they're trying to make up for some previous year losses.
Okay. All right.
So that is going into the retirement system, but those numbers are actuarially determined. So, yeah, there really is no choice in the matter for either us as a local government or the school system either for those.
Wouldn't it be neat if somebody like said, hey, we need to collect more money because you lost some money on an investment?
Most people's 401ks don't work.
I mean, really?
I guess you could hire an actuary and see what that got you.
Yeah, I know, but I'll say I don't think the actuary can write the check.
That's right. They can tell you where it's lost.
The actuary may not actually be able to write the check. Yeah.
But when you hire people with, in a lot of cases, 30 years ago, that economies were different and job market was far different and demands were far different, and benefit packages that were given to a lot of educators were not frowned upon then, as the market was flowing really well. And then when economic times have become not quite so good, those things are scrutinized, but that was a promise made 30 years ago to a lot of people.
Oh, my mom's a retired teacher. I mean, which I don't begrudge. I don't begrudge the educators having a retirement plan. It's just,
I don't begrudge any of this.
Absolutely.
The teacher raises, so well deserved. They deserve more, but it comes at a price in other pots of funding, because you don't have the option to give those who are in state positions raises and increases and not give it to everyone across the board. Okay. Other questions? Then if I could have just a couple of more minutes, some additional information has been compiled for you this evening based on recent questions that have been posed to board members, two of which the question was posed, what are the the long-range plans to slow the use of fund balance? And the other question, some explanation in the difference as far as the number of employees. That number has been reduced, while the amount of cost for personnel continues to increase. So I'd like to talk about each of those for just a moment. As far as slowing the use of fund balance for operational expenses, I'll give you the same three options that I've been giving for 2 years. The three options are school consolidation, having a reduction in force, and that simply means cutting staff positions, or obtain more funding. And I have to say that based on recent legislation pertaining to K-3 class size, we won't have the available space in our schools that we once thought we would based on some of these changes. Also, we would not obtain the same cost savings with personnel that we projected, because I have started to split positions between the smaller elementary schools. One example being the media coordinator that now is shared between Stony Point Elementary and Sugarloaf Elementary. Considering those factors as far as the capacity at the school level and the reduced cost of personnel, I truly don't think that we would capture the savings we first anticipated through school consolidation. Secondly, we have worked very hard in the school system to avoid a reduction in force, because I don't think, first of all, it's good for our children's education, but secondly, I don't think it's good for the county's economic situation. That brings me to my last option, to obtain more funding, and that's certainly the purpose of tonight's presentation. Next, I want to talk to you about increased costs for personnel versus a reduction in staff. As I said just a minute ago, teacher raises have been very deserved, but not all positions are covered with state funds, and all positions have to be covered. And also increased costs for benefits such as health care and retirement, that plays into the equation. Positions have been and continue to be absorbed through attrition across the system. And, in the past 3 years, we have eliminated 2 classified positions at the central office, and I am currently operating with 2 part-time directors at the central office, and it's very difficult. And then that brings me to my last slide. I continue to hear, it gets back to me, comments about, well, if you weren't so top-heavy at the central office. Well, I have to tell you, it doesn't feel like we're top-heavy when I consider all the duties that my leadership team members are responsible for on a daily basis. Most recently, when I heard this comment, well, if you would just cut some of the fat at the central office, I asked Dr. Curry to run numbers and do some checking, because I honestly wanted to know, are we top-heavy? Because, as I said, it doesn't feel like it when you see their list of duties and what they report to me on a weekly basis. While this chart it doesn't maybe show exact science, because in school systems, they will call people different names in different positions. But these numbers were compiled from systems anywhere from 3,000 students to 7,000. And she either talked to someone in their central office, in their HR department personally, or she went on a website to find the numbers that we have in this chart. Also, I found documentation from a school funding formula study that was published in October of 2017 that an average of 49% of central office administration was paid from state funds. When I ran our numbers, 56.4% of our central office administration is paid from state funds. That means really one of two things. Either we're doing it with a lot less people, or my people are making a lot less than people in similar positions. I also want to note that in the past 10 years, central office administrators have received a minuscule raise of 4.5% in 10 years. That doesn't even come close to the increases in the cost of living. Now, if you have questions about the chart, I do want you to know that we tried to be fair across every system. So, such as our central office driver's education position. We did not count that because in other systems we found that that position was housed at their high schools. Also, we did not count school psychologists for any system, and we did not count instructional coaches, IT technicians, and positions as such because they are based at the schools.
And other,
Pardon me?
across the board, those weren't counted in?
Correct. In any of the numbers that you're seeing, those folks were not counted in any of their numbers either.
Any questions?
Do you have other questions?
What time frame do you anticipate maybe getting your teacher allotments? How far out is?
Actually, I'm hoping that happens in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
It normally is about this time that we start getting some of that information, but I will tell you, some of our federal allotments, we were late in getting that information this year. But teaching positions, we should have that in the next couple of weeks.
And in enrollment, I guess you've had maybe your preschool screening for kindergarten?
That's still ongoing.
Okay.
Bethlehem, they screened 40 children today, and I think they have 41 scheduled tomorrow. So we're not quite finished with that.
We don't really know yet maybe where they're going to shake out?
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Harris,
Thank
for that
you.
report. We'll
Thank
be
you.
scheduling a meeting pretty soon
Great.
with y'all, so
Great.
just like with the rest of them, we'll get together, see what we can do, and then let you know.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
coming.
Dr. Hafner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item number 4, recognize our county manager, Rick French, for Document Destruction Day on April the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Document Destruction Day is scheduled for Saturday, April 21st from 8 to 1 p.m. The event will be held at the Alexander County Administration Building parking lot located on 621 Lyle Down Road. There's a limit to 5 boxes per person, and it's for Alexander County residents only. If you have any questions, if you would contact the Public Works Facilities Office at 632-1101. And that's all I have unless there's questions on that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. French. Moving on to item number 6, board appointments and reappointments. Council on Aging, Planning and Zoning, and recognize Mr. Rick French, County Manager, once again.
I'll go ahead and do sales tax also.
Yes, okay, and sales tax.
County sales tax through March 2018, $2 million. Regular county sales tax, $2,714,999, which is 59.59% of the budget collected, and the percentage of the budget year expired, which is 7 months worth, is 58.33%. Our budget for regular sales tax is $4,556,000. Compared to last year, we were 5.58, almost 5.6% ahead. The new sales tax We've collected $844,718 so far, which is a little over 60% of the budget collected through, again, 58.3% of the budget year. Our budget for the new sales tax is $1,399,000, and we were 7.1% ahead of this time last year. As far as the Alexander County appointments, we have Council on Aging, reappoint Angel Barnes, 3 years, Angela Johnson, Janet Johnson, Sally Goodnight for 3 years. Planning and Zoning Commission, reappoint Dana Benfield, 2 years, Steve Eisenhower, and Bud Kaywood for 2 years.
Okay. I'd entertain the motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion or any questions? Being none, I'd entertain the vote to approve. All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Motion carries unanimously. I guess we'll move on to number 7, other business. Recognize County Manager Rick French again for County Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The budget amendments, budget amendment number 43 is the budget for the payback required for the fiscal year 2013 revised Medicaid cost report due to Medicaid cost report formulas being changed after reports were filed to budget for computer needs for the remainder of the current budget year. The payback and computer needs are being paid from revenues received in fiscal year 2018 that were not a part of the original budget estimates. $13,454 refund from the 2014 revised Medicaid cost report, and $7,500 from a revenue source called Meaningful Use Funds related to improved electronic medical records. That's all in the Health Department, and to increase budget for additional food and lodging state funds. Budget amendment number 44 is to increase the budget for Medicaid hold harmless distribution greater than the original budget estimate, so it increased $100,000. And to budget for the transfer of funds from the jail project fund in the fiscal year 2019 general fund budget. The transfer reused the money from the January 2011 jail loan proceeds for the fiscal year 2019 interest payments on the debt. That will use up that account. And I'll be glad to try to answer any questions on the budget amendments on that part of it, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? If not, entertain a motion to approve budget amendments number 43 through 45 as stated.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve budget amendments 43 through 45 as stated.
Do you have a motion? To hear a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yeah, to entertain a vote to approve the budget and ordinances as stated. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Budget amendments are approved. Thank you.
Just a couple other things to mention. One is that I know we've talked about budget quite a bit tonight. We will need to schedule a work session with the full board if possible before the end of this month. Our schedule is for a public hearing to be held on May the 7th and for the adoption of the budget on May 14th. Also, we have a long closed session tonight. I just want to remind everybody of that. So that's all I have for my report, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, sir.
I think that's our 5th warning.
Yeah.
Hey, Ronnie.
Okay. Mr. Kim.
I think we just need to thank all the department heads that presented tonight. That was very well done. And I know a lot of them have already left, but that was very concise, and everybody pretty much stayed the 15 minutes, and it was a high-level presentation. So that was kind of what we had hoped this would look like tonight, and it actually did. So just our thanks to all of you, because I know it took a lot of time, a lot of effort. So thank you very much.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Next item will be our consent agenda. I'm sure each one's had time to look at it. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated in our book. Have a motion, have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion or any questions on the consent agenda? Okay, being none, I'd entertain a vote of approval on the consent agenda. All in favor, vote by raising the right hand. All right. Anyone opposed likewise? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. And I guess what we've been kind of looking for. Motion to go into closed session per NCGS 143-318, 4, 5, and 6 for economic development, contractual, and personnel. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. And we will reconvene, but only for the purpose of adjournment. All in favor, stand up, vote, raise your right hand. Thank you.